Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together, we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
That's right, Tori. We're going to share our experiences on how we've grown our businesses while balancing family with other paying work responsibilities. It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible. Welcome back to another episode of Quilting on the Side. We are very thankful to have our sponsor, Patreon, and our growing community. You can find Quilting on the Side on Patreon and get a behind-the-scenes look. We have two different levels. Tori, quick describe the friends of the podcast.
So we have Friends of the Podcast, which is $5 a month, and you get into our Patreon community. You get everything except our question and answer session. So if you want to join our question and answer session, that is the BFF Side Hustlers. It's $15 a month and you get a full hour with Andi and I and our fellow entrepreneurs to discuss the questions you have in your business. Now, it's still an intimate community, so you always get your questions answered.
Yeah, it's been fun to get to know people face to face, real time kind of with those Q&A discussions. So hop over to Patreon and get some business boosting information with us there. But we want to dive into a great discussion today, very topical, very current events, and that is AI, the rise of the machine in the quilting world. I have to admit, I am a total novice. I have dabbled just a tiny bit with all the free services, ChatGPT being the most popular and most well-known, I guess, of the AI things. And I keep my ear to the ground on what's going on with AI, but I haven't played with it very much myself. And part of that, we see it in our day jobs. Tori and I are both instructional designers. We facilitate and develop corporate training materials. So AI is huge, but I'm in a government position and they've said no way, no AI. So that limits my experimentation to my off hours and I always have other things to do.
And it's funny you say that because my corporation developed an AI, but we're not allowed to use it.
Well, how funny.
Right? It's interesting.
So where do you think those concerns come from for not using it?
Well, first, let's back up a bit and kind of talk about what AI is. So I know that when it first came out, there was a lot of suspicion, a lot of fear, a lot of what is this thing? And we have this like 1980s view of AI where it's
Terminator.
My husband is a 80s baby and he was like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? He grew up with RoboCop and Terminator. So we had these fun discussions about what it is and stuff. And honestly, I started using it because I saw someone use it to explain something back to them. And I'm like, I might be able to use that. So how do I use this without it taking my information? So I signed up for a free account and just kind of asked it to explain a concept from my day jobs. I work for a tech company. Sometimes we work with really technical jargon that, especially 2 years ago when my 1-year-old wasn't sleeping, I was kind of like, what is he talking about? Like my manager, he talks a lot like a computer manual. That's how I originally started using AI, was just to kind of explain a few concepts back to me. Instead of explaining it to me like I'm a fifth grader. Explain it like I'm a kindergartner. It made little metaphors and stuff. And I'm like, that makes no sense. How about an 8th grader? You can have a conversation and really get it to put out what you're looking for. From there, I was really hesitant as well to use it. And one thing that really got me into it was I started learning more about it. ChatGPT is my go-to at the moment. I really like the chatbot. There are a ton of GPTs out there, and we could talk about more about what those really are in a minute. But ChatGPT is one of the original. It's one of the most basic and easy to use. I like its user interface. It's very intuitive. But what is it exactly? It stands for artificial intelligence, which already sounds a little intimidating. It's a computer program that kind of processes logically, and it tries to be like a human. so that it can be easy to use. It's not to mimic you, but it's more for user experience. It's an assistant who can read all of the public domain information on the internet.
Yeah, really fast. They can take this huge amount of information and they can condense it down and summarize it.
Right? It's like when you're trying to put a bookcase together, and instead of using a screwdriver, you're going to use a drill. It makes things faster. It makes it easier. It can get answers back to you a lot quicker. So you can do the same type of research that ChatGPT is doing, that any AI is doing, except it would probably take you months or years, whereas ChatGPT can do it in seconds. Now, this also means it has access to all the weird information out there. So it could go off the rails with some of the conspiracy theories and things like that, that throws the logic off. It looks at all the opinions out there, because as we know as humans, there's a difference between fact and opinion, and it can blur those, and that's where the information becomes weird, wrong. Like,
yeah, we've heard the stories of lawyers trying to argue based on AI summary, and AI just made up cases and historical information that doesn't exist. So you can, like you were saying, it can be a conversation. So you can honestly ask the platform where they got their information. Like, okay, ChatGPT, give me a source for this. And, as you build it, it will either cite something or tell you it made it up.
And what's great is that it's gotten into that practice. I don't know if that's just my GPT because I keep asking it for sources, but it automatically starts sharing sources with me. So whenever it gives the information, it's like, here's where I found it. You can click on the link and go to the website and read it yourself, because it's predictive text, right? It just looks at the patterns of how people speak and writes it down and sends it back to you. So that way it feels user friendly. It also, I like to compare it to your phone when you're texting and you see those little suggested words that come up that help you type faster. That's predictive text. That's what predictive text is. It just kind of predicts what you're going to say next based off of what you've said before, what everybody else has said before. It's the same thing. It's like predictive text on steroids.
Yeah.
It's not that different, which makes it, I hope, less scary and less fearful for those listening to the episode, and less suspicious for those listening to the episode, because it's not right all the time, because it's picking up patterns from people, and people are not perfect.
So let's talk about some of those ways that you have seen quilters and crafters using AI and where we can best put it into practice with our businesses.
I feel like in the creative space, it's been really hush hush. Like, if you use ChatGPT, if you use an AI tool, there's so many people who don't want to talk about it. And I guess that's why I'm whispering. I don't see a lot of people talking about it, but I can kind of see when they're writing their emails, when they're writing their blogs, when they're coming up with posts on social media. I see these little trademarks of ChatGPT, which I don't want to give it away because they're really simple. They're not going to hurt anything. But there's these little things, like I can do one example. If you do a dash, right? I tend to write with dashes a lot lately, so it's been putting dashes in mine. And the dashes it uses is really long. It's not the little dash, it's like the really long one. So if you see someone like writing a newsletter, you have a really long dash, that's one of the little hallmarks of ChatGPT, is put this really long dash.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of emojis. ChatGPT likes emojis.
I always tell it, remove the emojis. Remove the emojis. I'm not a cartoon.
Right. But that's one of the benefits of using these kind of tools to speed up your process for some of those time-consuming tasks that you were talking about. Coming up with all the captions for your social media, putting out a newsletter. It learns your tone of voice, and you can say, make it sound more professional, use a friendlier tone, throw in some jokes about superheroes, and it will adapt and put in some of those sentence structures and images.
Well, I really like that you brought that up. So I wanted to talk about, if you were interested in your own tool, how you can get it to be like you.
Yeah.
Well, I use ChatGPT, which is on OpenAI. That's the company, OpenAI. And you go to OpenAI, you could create a free account. You can also pay for one that has more features, but you can get a free account, and that account can learn you. It's just like a login with a website. It's just like your login with Facebook. It learns you, your friends, your network, and it does suggested friends and stuff like that. It's really similar, where it can build up a library of words you use all the time and some key information about you. It doesn't remember everything, but it remembers some key information about you so that it can help with your tasks. Like Andi was saying, writing social media posts, writing blog posts. I love to use it for writing. It's amazing with outlines. It's amazing with idea generation, titles for emails and subject lines, like giving you options so that you can choose from them. And things like that. It's been an amazing tool to have in your back pocket to just generate ideas.
Yeah. So one of the interesting experiments that I've heard people do with ChatGPT is to have it write a quilt pattern. Obviously, there's tons of free patterns out there on the internet, so there is a database of information for it to pull from. But I have to tell you about a fun experiment. Kim over from Cotton Cuts, who we've had on the podcast, she sat down with her son who loves to sew and quilt, and they decided to let GPT write a pattern and then they would test it. So they were going to follow the instructions step by step. And Kim had a really good perspective. She said, AI can get you 80% there. It's an assistant. It can get you started. It can give you the main points. So they made this quilt block and they had put in the image of the finished block and then had it write the instructions and everything. But there were holes in their finished. They followed it exactly. And it had like the corner pieces were right, but then it was missing a side piece. So you can't trust it for everything. So that's a good comfort, I think, to some people who are hesitant that we're never going to replace humans. We need that human proofreading aspect of it, put it through the common sense test.
I did actually write down 2 things that it's not good at. One is context. It doesn't know the context unless you give it to it. And even then it can miss the context.
Yeah.
And the other one is connotation. It doesn't understand that certain words evoke feeling. I was playing with tone and it came up with this tone where it kept saying the word gentle. It's like, we're going to do this gently. And I'm like, that's not how you use that word. I kept trying to get it to stop using gentle. It sounds patronizing. It sounds negative. It doesn't sound good. And it was like, oh, got it. Okay, we won't use that. And then it used it again. I was like, stop it. Yeah, but it doesn't understand connotation, doesn't understand the emotion that those certain words evoke. So it is really, really good. It gets you 80% of the way. You want to review it. You want to put your own personal touch on it. And if you're using this, as some of us may be really good at coming up with new ideas. So as I'm using ChatGPT, I'm always coming up with ideas on how I can use this in the future. And I've looked up the legality of selling what AI produces. And one of the major factors of being able to sell this as anything that ChatGPT helps you generate is making sure it's your IP and you're putting the human perspective on it. So even if it's outlining steps in a process, whatever process that may be, you can go in there and add in your own process steps, your own pictures, and your own examples, and then change the wording a bit so it sounds like you. And that puts so much of you in there that is no longer AI generated or fully AI generated. And so the outlines are safe to use as long as you're putting your own voice to it and your own perspective, your own examples and experience. Because like Andi said, you can't replace that with AI. You can only do that with a human.
Yeah, talking about some of these prompts and exercises, I'd love for you to share the exercise we did in our Audacious retreat that we had back in February, because you had such a great flow to give all of us a chance to practice with ChatGPT.
Yeah, I loved it. That was really exciting, especially because we had to scale it down. And I'm like, okay, how in the world are we going to take a full day of business teaching and scale it to like 3 hours? What I had them do was basically create their own prompt for ChatGPT using whatever offer they were coming up with. Some had a block of months, some had a pattern that's going to release. This exercise was going to help them build a launch email sequence and just really focus on that for our 3 hours. And so what I had them do is pick out their ideal customer. Who is this offer for? What is this offer? Unique positioning. So if you're launching a block of the month, are you focusing on community? Are you focusing on skills? That's the positioning. So how are you positioning this product for your audience? Is it best for skill building? Is it best, we're all going to meet on Zoom every week live and have fun talking while we make this pretty thing? Or is it all about competition? You give that to ChatGPT using my framework for an email launch, and it wrote the email launch for you.
Yeah, it was so eye-opening for all of us because I think many of us as business owners have gone through that thought process of, okay, who is our ideal customer and how are we going to describe our offer and, what are all the components? But then having you guide us to put those details into ChatGPT, crafting the prompt is kind of the art of working with AI that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you have to set it up for success. So, hey, ChatGPT, you are my copywriter and I need to write an email sequence. We're going to talk to this customer about this offer. And so you really front load it with all that work of your own creativity. So it's coming from you. And you're just using this tool to speed up the process. So
Yes.
that was great. And you're coming up with some other prompt structures, and are those available to people?
Okay, so I've been dabbling. I do want to go back to that human experience and talk about images, because that's been
That's another
a
big
huge
thing with
discussion.
AI.
Yeah. So you talked about the quilt block, how it holes in it from the directions and things like that, because it can only do so much. The same thing with images. I have not found a good AI that can really create images. And honestly, the ones where they're trying to be realistic are creepy.
Yeah. It's like it can't do thumbs and fingers. And so you end up with like 6 fingers and it just is so bizarre if it's
like
trying to create a human.
It's like coming out from behind, like, what are you doing? I asked one to put a pencil behind an ear, and it was like, I had no idea what I was talking about. It was like floating in the air. The cartoonish versions, like that looks a little hand drawn, those are okay. But if you're thinking of selling something with an image, I would still create your own or take an actual photograph, smartphone or your photography equipment. I would not rely on ChatGPT, and I would especially not sell it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I went to a seminar from Adobe, and they have a platform called Adobe Express that is similar-ish to Canva. You can do a lot of image manipulation. And within that system, they have some AI. And it was really good, like you said, of if you can start with an image, sketch, or, a quilt block or something, it can generate multiple different formats for that, styles. You can do a pencil sketch, you can do a watercolor, and it will immediately, within seconds, give you multiple variations. You can tell it, I'm doing a landscape and I want a pine tree on a hill, but I need some bushes in the lower right corner and I want a steeper hill. It will do this just by you telling it what to draw.
I'm really glad you brought that up. So that's something else I wanted to talk about was customized GPTs. So the one for Adobe, the one for Canva, they're made by those companies to really focus in on what they're specializing in. So Canva's all about graphic design. So their AI is all going to be focused on graphic design and creating images. Same with Adobe. It's going to be more focused. Whereas ChatGPT on OpenAI, it is everything. It gets confused and it sees way too much input. Whereas if you're using a specialized AI tool, it's narrowed down. It's given prompts. It's given a framework like I talked about. And that's why you have specialized ones, because someone on the back end programmed it to look for certain things and focus in on certain things. So that's why you see so many tools coming out. Most of it is geared specifically for a certain use. So whether that's images, finding, researching, using certain codes, using certain frameworks, it's all narrowed down. Whereas something like ChatGPT is wide open. It sees everything.
And we see some of these images on social media. I'm thinking of all of the kind of fake pattern sites or the selling that happens on social media, and they're like, buy this quilt for $20, and it looks like it's done with all these tiny scrappy pieces, and you're like, there is no way that a human made that quilt, made that post, made that image. So yeah, people are discerning, and obviously when it looks too good to be true, it probably is.
For real. And I do have a blog post that talks about how to stand out with your images as a real person if you're worried about that. Me and the DMMC, we had this really good discussion about how can you gear your photographs to show you're a real person. So you can still take really nice photos. We just had this really cool discussion, so I put it in a blog post for everyone to reference, so you can go and see that.
And just a side note, while we're talking about images, my sister-in-law has a degree in fashion, the fashion designers on the big runway shows in Paris, they're starting to use more intricate fabrics that can't be easily copied by AI. That was one of the things that she noticed as a trend, was that designers were using multiple prints kind of in one outfit to trick the AI copycats.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating to step back and see all the different areas where AI is impacting our world. And obviously with anything, there's going to be the good uses and then there's going to be the bad uses. And we want to help people use it for good.
Yeah, because it can save you so much time, energy, and peace of mind. I went to a webinar called AI, My Second Brain. I loved it so much because one of the key things that AI can do, and that she pointed out, was that it has perfect recall. And us as humans, we don't. Like, as much as we try, we don't. We only have certain things that stick and we don't remember everything. But AI can have perfect recall. So if you're having a day, like I was struggling with brain fog, especially when I wasn't sleeping. So if I had a really great idea, I could write it down somewhere, but I would always lose it. That's when I started the notebook thing, and I was like writing things in a bunch of notebooks, which helped. But what would have been really cool to expand on is actually use AI and have it help me to document. And I wouldn't trust AI to document long term. It's a short term thing. And then I would save it somewhere where long term, like I tend to use Google Drive, but it does have perfect recall. So it can recall things and you can upload your stuff back to it later on and go right back into what's next. And another thing I love about it is that when you share an idea, like I have this idea to launch this course, or I have this idea that I want to do this for my next pattern, and it will move to the next logical step. And it will ask you, do you want help with coming up with the description? Do you want help writing a social post about it? Do you want to do this, this, or this? This is what I can do to help move you forward. It's like a little assistant that's prompting you and encouraging you to keep going with these amazing ideas. It gives you an idea of what could be the next step, which many of us, I know with our goal planning, we don't always know what is the next action step, and ChatGPT can be there as your second brain to see the next logical step if you're not sure, and it can kind of guide you. Again, I wouldn't trust it full on out. I'm suspicious of it a little bit, but it is a great tool, and that's what it is. It's a tool. It doesn't think like a person. It doesn't feel like a person. It predicts patterns, and it's logical. With our businesses, we're so emotional. I mean, we've talked on this podcast about the launch roller coaster and how emotionally invested we get in. And of course we do. This is something we're at the very least really interested in. At the very most, we're super passionate about it. And it involves a lot of emotion. And I've even put in a few prompts for ChatGPT and asked it, I need you to remove the emotion out of this decision and just tell me what could be logical. Am I thinking logically? I'm a highly emotional person. So like sometimes I just need that help. Take the logic wheel for me and tell me, is this logical? And the few times that I've done that, I like how it backs up its conclusion. So it actually listed the facts of the situation. It listed the impact, the pros and cons, basically. And then it gave me the conclusion very logically.
Yeah, that would be super helpful to be able to consider, do I really think these pros and cons are valid, and let it resonate. So are we ready to talk about how you've crafted these prompts and put them together in a way someone else could use?
One last thing I want to talk about is OpenAI specifically, and I'm sure other platforms have done this as well. They have updated their privacy. So you can go into your settings and turn off a setting that it keeps your IP in your account. So it doesn't go out to train all the AIs. It just helps train your AI. And then you can go even further to turn off its memory. So you're just using a blank canvas every time you go in there, and it can really privatize your information. So you don't have to worry about your information being shared all over the internet if that's a fear. They really try to make it secure so that your information is safe, and what it only uses to teach everyone are like patterns, word phrases that are more human.
Yeah. And that was the biggest concern for my day job. We deal with proprietary information. We deal with people's personal information, and we don't want to be allowing an open platform to then have that in its quote database, in its history. Like you said, companies are really narrowing that, putting up some guardrails so that it it only learns from you while you're using it. If you read through Adobe's ethics page about how they're using AI and what they consider their database, their universe of knowledge to make those predictive elements, they're in a similar vein. They're limiting access. They're not going out to the whole world. They're just using a contained source. So it's kind of like it's becoming a library, and it can only search the books that are in its library. It's not going out to the whole internet. I think we're being responsible stewards. There are reasonable people out there. It's not this, Wild West anything goes kind of world. So
if you're listening and you're like, that's what I thought, because like the fear that came out when it first was introduced to the marketplace, the fear behind it all was intense.
Yeah, and I know there were a lot of concerns with copyright and infringing on people's intellectual property, and hopefully we're alleviating some of that as people learn to navigate this new world.
And like I said before, I would go to a human every time I needed anything that I am going to sell and I don't know how to create. So if it's an image, if it's a quilt pattern, like tech editor, I would rather go to a tech editor than trust AI. Like, you can't get rid of the human part of it, because that's what makes it relatable. That's what makes it so much fun and passionate. And that's what your customers connect to.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready.
Finally, Tori's going to tell us what she's created.
Okay, so what I've done is kind of dived into creating my own AI tools. So there's 3. 2 are going to be inside the digital marketing magic community, because like I said, they're focused tools, and I don't think they're going to be as useful for the wide audience, because they're pieces of a puzzle. And if you only have pieces,
you can't see what it's supposed to be.
Exactly. So one is a email launch assistant, and it's basically a more detailed version of what we did at Audacious.
That's very
cool.
Instead
of having a prompt where you plug in the words, this AI tool, this GPT, already has it on the back end. I gave her a personality. I made it to her, and you can talk to her like a person. So you're like, hey, I want to launch my next pattern. Here's what it's called. Can you help me? And she's like, oh yeah, sure. Okay. This is the information I need from you. And it asks you a series of questions. You give it, you just answer the questions as best as you can with as much detail as you can. Like I said, it needs context. And then she will take my framework and give you, without giving my framework, she will write the emails for you.
That's awesome.
Just like we did with Audacious. And then you can sit there and talk back and forth through, like, no, this email doesn't make sense, or the quote I got there, this quote's off, like that's not what it meant to say. Like sometimes it paraphrases, and like I said, it doesn't get connotation, so you want to read through it and make sure it works. But that's what it does, and it writes emails for you, so it takes off the work. You still have to put in the thought process. You still have to answer the questions, understand what your ideal customer wants, who your ideal customer is, what problems your product solves, and certain other things. But it cuts down your work by like days. Like for me, at least, I would sit there and write email sequences for days. With this tool, I'm cranking out email sequences in hours.
Yeah, that's going to be so helpful for just, put out a plan to launch a pattern or a course or whatever, and then you get bogged down in some of these details. You're like, oh, well, I don't have that ready yet, so I'll push the launch for this month, and then it goes to a year. So just having that digital assistant to, hey, here, take care of this for me.
And then the other one is another assistant. I made it a she. I called her Barb the Builder. And she is a landing page builder.
Woo!
So she's going to help you. I put my framework on the back end for her. One of the biggest challenges that my clients have is coming up with answers to some of these questions. Because we're a hobby industry, we don't solve a problem. We have more of a creative pursuit. Our customers are looking for challenges. They're looking for fun. They're looking for community. And a chat or somebody who's not in the creative space won't know that. So that's the kind of information I've put on the back end of this GPT, so that it can reference all of my ideas, all of the ideas I have for the DMMC. She puts your thoughts, your offer, all those answers to a couple of the questions she asks in a logical order that flows down a page. So you don't have to worry about, okay, I know I want to tell them the description of what they're getting, I know I want to talk about the problem I saw, but where does that all go? How do I write about that? How many bullet points do I need? Where do the bullet points go? Can I just write a paragraph? No, it needs to be broken up. Like, how do I do that? So she does that for you in a way that follows the framework I put on the back end of her. And I have a free landing page workshop in just a few days. So if you're listening to this, it's coming on afterwards. But keep an eye out because I have some free stuff coming. I had a very basic one on there. It was kind of honestly, it was really lazy of me to just be like, here are the free workshops for the first part of this year. Sign up below. I had 15 people sign up over the course of 4 months. And I just had them listed there. I didn't even put a date, Andi. And I still had people sign up. I'm like, you guys are amazing. First off, thank you if you did sign up for one of those free workshops on that really lazy landing page. Oh my God, you have so much faith in me. Thank you. But then I used Barb the Builder to restructure it for the very last workshop, the landing page workshop, and my conversions tripled. And I didn't do much anything different. I posted twice on social media, which didn't get any traction because, of course, when you talk about marketing, Instagram seems to like drop it down. One email to my list, tripled conversions. And I'm like, I think this is going to work. But you have to read it. You have to understand why she is asking for a certain piece of information, how to phrase those, and the different parts that make this whole before it can really work for you. And that's why it's behind the membership, so that I can be there to help, because this is just a part of a puzzle and you need to have the full puzzle to make a digital marketing plan work. Yeah. So those are two. I'm really excited about those. I've had a few other people test them and they are loving them. So I think that members are going to love it, and whoever joins later will love it. Last one I created was specifically for SEO, search engine optimization. So how your website ranks on Google. And I shouldn't say it that way. It doesn't tell you exactly how it ranks. But what we do know is that Google leans on a framework called the E. The first E is for experience. The second E is for expertise. A is for authoritativeness, and the last one, T, is for trustworthiness. And what I've programmed this GPT, this AI tool, to do is to review your website based off of this Google's framework. And then it gives you, and again, I've programmed it to do this, gives you what you're doing well and what you can work on, and then an itemized action list. It's amazing. And I have 3 ways you can do it. First, and it's not for sale quite yet, I want a lawyer to look it over. I want to make sure this is protected, but I also want to make sure it's legal and available. Make sure we cover all our bases, because this is very new still, selling AI tools. So the first one is going to be do it yourself. So they can go in, they get the simplified version of the SEO AI, because it doesn't do deep research like I can do on my end. So that's the first offer, is you can do it yourself 24/7, whenever you want. You can go in, ask it to run it again, and it can help you with all kinds of things when it comes to search engine optimization. So how well your website is doing, how you're demonstrating experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, and how you can improve it. And then the second option is you can do it with me. So I'll be there. We can go through it together live. You can run it beforehand and we can talk about what it's talking about. Because I've also programmed it to be not jargon-less, but like leave the confusing jargon out and explain it. Because like you and me on the street don't know all these terms behind SEO. And the third is to let me run a deep research one, which doesn't just give like a handful of action steps. It gives you a 24-page report, and it runs basically like what Google would run through. And what's really interesting, and I don't want to freak anybody out, but we all know whatever you put on the internet stays on the internet. And Google can follow all of the links everywhere. And that's how it ranks your website. It can see you were on a podcast. It can see you wrote a blog post over here. It can see that you were a guest speaker at an event. It can see all those pieces. It can see where you publicly share stuff on Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram. And it all ties back to your website and how your website ranks in that expertise, experience, trustworthiness, and authoritativeness. And the deep research part that I can do follows those threads and pulls a detailed report. It's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
The first time I did it, I was like, it was an idea that I had listening to a webinar about SEO. And I just finished that Second Brain webinar from about ChatGPT. And then I was like, what if I could use it to follow Google's framework and figure out how to improve my website? And I made a prompt and it blew me out of the water. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I reached out to my tech bestie who actually, her business name is Tech Bestie. She's a military spouse. Her name is Selena. She's absolutely amazing. I reached out to her and I was like, I think I've got something here. Can you look at this? And she was at a conference, and Andi, she said it was gold. She's like, this is amazing. And she rebuilds websites. So she builds them for, and her specialty is restaurants. So that's where her ideal client is. And it was amazing to get that feedback. And so I wanted to create it for everyone to use and offer that as a service, because I know that's a struggle for so many of us who want our own website. We want to get off Etsy. We want our own platform, but how do we use that platform? How do we get people there? Part of it's the digital marketing. Part of it is SEO. And I've created this tool. I'm over the moon. I'm giddy about it. Like, still.
So now everybody has some context for your new beanie that says Tech Master. It should say
after I
AI Wrangler.
That's exactly. I created the SEO one, and I called my sister. I'm like, I am a master of tech. I am the tech master. I have just created my own AI tool. And she was like, what? And I tried to explain to her because she doesn't have a business. She's a nurse. She's very happy in the nursing field. And she was just like, sounds cool.
Right? Good for you.
Right? And then I said, I need a hat that says that. And it was just kind of an offhand comment. And then when I went to see her for a baby shower, she threw a package at me and she's like, there you go. And I was like, what? Yeah, it was a hat. It's a hat that says Tech Master.
That's awesome. So we are very excited that you are going to help all of us master this new world of AI and put it to good use in our business. So we want to remind people, you can continue the discussion with us on Patreon. We take a deep dive into all sorts of topics like this and really apply it to our businesses. Join Tori's DMMC to get the coaching and use these tools inside. And we are looking forward to the SEO tool that's coming soon. So thanks so much, Tori. I know we could go on. We say this every time. I think this does have the record, though, for the longest episode. So thanks for sticking with us. I love your passion and the desire to help. And it really does help grow our businesses. And we want you to go out there and have fun and count it down with us. We're going to do a little quilting on the side. What a great discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening. It can be iTunes, Spotify, or even our YouTube channel.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.